Madam Chair, we are now live.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Moya. Thank you all for joining us today. It's June 14th, 2021, and I call this meeting to order. This is the Finance and Government Operations Committee of the City Council. Councillor Harris is excused from today's meeting and Councillor Jones will be serving as an alternate for him. All other committee members are present today via Zoom. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on video or audio conference. We appreciate your patience as FGO meetings are conducted this way. No written comments were received for today's meeting. Members of the public will be able to address the committee if they have signed up for live public comment per the rules published on the agenda and on our website Friday. Speakers will be moved into the meeting room two at a time. They will remain muted with their camera off until they are called upon to speak, at which point they can turn their camera on, unmute themselves, and will have 1.5 minutes to provide comments to the committee. After that, they will again be muted and return to be an attendee of the Zoom webinar. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube and Zoom webinar. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. For those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. We will start with public comment. Mr. Moya, did we have anyone signed up?
Madam Chair, yes, we had Janet Sayer sign up to speak, and she'll be the only one providing public comment.
Okay, well, Ms. Sayer, thank you for joining us to provide public comment. If you're watching the YouTube live feed for this meeting, please mute or turn it off at this time. And here are some ground rules for public comment. They are to be addressed to the committee members only. Each participant has 1.5 minutes to present, and any disruptive conduct will result in the removal of the Zoom meeting room. There will be a 1.5 minute time limit, and the timer will start once you begin speaking. Then the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up. Mr. Moya, if you'll please let Ms. Sayer in, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Sayers, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
And I'm actually not seeing where to put myself, turn on my camera. Oh, there we go. Start my video. Okay, well, good afternoon. My name is Janet Sayers. I'm actually a resident of District 9, but the project I'm speaking on is within Pat Davis. It's on 700 Yale Southeast, so it's on the borderline between Councillor Davis and Councillor Benton. And this has to do with R21-174, which is the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund list of projects that will go to the full council next Monday. And I'm speaking on behalf of Historic Fairview Cemetery. We submitted a proposal for about $9,000 for this coming Urban Enhancement Trust Fund 2-year process, and that would have helped with a variety of things at the cemetery. It is owned by a local nonprofit. I'm on the board, and I was very disappointed that we were not selected, but I'll get over it. But in any event, I was more disappointed that so many of the almost 60 organizations on the list, what they're doing is fine, but it involves a one-day event. It involves a festival, a dance, a musical program, and others. We are a history group, and local history is definitely part of what's approved under the original Urban Enhancement Trust Fund from, goodness, 35, almost 40 years ago. And I just was concerned that so much of what was on that list, although worthy, was more event-based and one-time ephemeral. It would happen and that would be it. Historic Fairview Cemetery has been out there for 140 years, graves of notable New Mexicans. This would have been an opportunity to have made touring that cemetery with its almost 8,000 tombstones of more of an educational resource.
Thank you, Ms. Sayers. Your 1.5 minutes is up.
It is, and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Madam Chair, that will conclude general public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moya. Thank you, Ms. Sayers.
You're very welcome.
We are going to now move on to agenda item A. EC 343 is approval of Karen Meyer's second supplemental agreement funded by Cities for Financial Empowerment Grant to improve the financial stability of low and moderate income households. I move approval. And Councillor Sena, I see a second. Thank you so much. Councillors, any questions, comments? Okay, Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Hinojos. I would like to make a motion for immediate action.
Second.
Second from Sena, Borrego, I think everybody. Any discussion? No? Pretty easy on this one. Ms. Hinojos for the vote, please.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. Item B is EC 348, blanket amendment to the scheduled airline operating agreement and terminal building lease and the scheduled cargo airline operating agreement and cargo building lease. I move approval. Thank you, Councillor Sena, for the second. Any questions or comments, councillors? Director Allen?
Madam Chair, I would just like to request immediate action.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I'll move immediate action.
Okay, once we go ahead and vote on the approval of this, then we'll go ahead and take a motion for immediate action. Thank you. Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Okay, Councillor Borrego.
I would move immediate action, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and second that. Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to item agenda C, EC 349 is approval of the agreement for FY22 outside council legal services between Waltz and Associates PC and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval. Councillor Sena, thank you. Any questions or comments, councillors? Ms. Hinojos, it's your turn, please.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Item agenda D is EC 350, approval of the risk agreement for FY22 outside council legal services between German Burnett and Associates LLC and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval. Councillor Sena with a second. Thank you. Any questions, comments, councillors? Ms. Hinojos, if you will, please.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Agenda item E is EC 351, approval of the risk agreement for FY22 outside council legal services between YLaw PC and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego with a second. Any comments or questions, councillors? And Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Agenda item F is EC 352, approval of the risk agreement for FY22 outside counsel legal services between Atler Law Firm PC and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval. Thank you, Counselor Sena. And counselors, any questions or comments? Mr. Aguilar, if you would like to say something?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apologies, but on all of the legal services agreements, we would respectfully request immediate action. So I didn't need that vote on the last two, but so we would be able to have a seamless continuity and transition. We would appreciate that.
Too late. I'm just teasing.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, Madam President.
can we I move immediate action on the last item? Can we go back? Is that appropriate? I think we can, right?
Madam
Mr.
President? I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I thought that there was a motion on the floor for item F. If there is a motion on the floor for item F, you'll need to deal with that first. That motion is what's on the floor. And after that time, you could go back and move immediate action for the respective bills.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would move immediate action on this particular bill.
Okay, Madam President, we'll go ahead and do that as soon as we finish taking the vote on this.
Okay.
All right, so Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take the vote on item F.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, Madam President?
Madam Chair, I would like to go back to item, I guess it's E. Is that
Wait, Madam
correct?
President, will you make a motion for item F first, please, so that we'll finish out item F and then we'll go backwards.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, I'm sorry. So I would move immediate action on item F at this point.
I will second that motion. Thank you. And Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. I would like to move immediate action for item E, EC 351.
Second.
Thank you, Madam President, for Y Law PC and the City of Albuquerque. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. I would like to move immediate action on item D, EC 350, approval of German Burnett and Associates.
Second.
Thank you. Almost all the counselors. Good job. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
I would like to move immediate action for item C, EC 349, which is Waltz and Associates PC. Thank you,
Second.
Counselor Sena, I see. Thank you with the second. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Mr. Aguilar, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we caught up and we're on the same page. And then we're going to continue on with G, and I'm assuming same story.
That's correct. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so moving on to item G is EC 353, approval of the risk agreement for FY22 outside counsel legal services between Kennedy, Moulton, and Wells PC and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval. Thank you, Counselor Sena with the second. Any questions? Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion for immediate action.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Borrego. Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item H is EC 354, approval of the risk agreement for FY22 outside council legal services between Law Office of John Lynn M. Martinez, LLC and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval. Thank you, Counselor Sena with the second. Any questions? Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion for immediate action. Thank you, Counselor Sena. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. You would think with all of these outside council legal services, we're running a legitimate thing here. Good job, council. Good job, City of Albuquerque. We're going to move on to agenda item I, EC 355, is the approval of the second supplemental agreement for Roderick Kennedy to add funds to continue legal services. I move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Madam President. Any questions? Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
We're going to move on to agenda item J is EC 356, approval of the risk agreement for FY21 outside council legal services between Pfeiffer, Hansen, Mullins, and Baker, PA, and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval. Thank you, Counselor Sena. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. I would like to make a motion for immediate action.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Borrego, Counselor Sena, Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. I think we did well with all of those ECs. Thank you, committee. We want going to move on to agenda item K. This is Counselor Borrego, 049.
Yes, Counselor, remind me of the title of it, because I don't have the agenda right in front of me.
Madam President, this is amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 1 of the revised ordinances of Albuquerque, New Mexico, 1994, the Capital Improvements Ordinance for the creation of a capital set aside for underserved areas and communities.
Yeah, let me tell the council a little bit about this. If you all recall,
Madam President, I'm sorry to interrupt. Will you just make a motion and we'll get a second and then I'll come back to you?
oh, sure, yes, absolutely, Councilor, thank you. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. A second from Counselor Pena. Thank you. Okay, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. So I'm toggling between the agenda and my screen here, so that's why I don't have the agenda right in front of me. So Councilors, if you recall, some time ago, we talked about, equity, I guess, for areas that are areas of disinvestment. And so basically what this does is it establishes a fund for these areas. And in the past, and I want to mention this because it's really important. In the past, and Councilor Bassan and I spoke about this today, there used to be what we called the pocket of poverty. And they've since eliminated sort of that. And capital improvements does prioritize areas of disinvestment, but there's not necessarily always enough funding to go around. So what this particular bill does is it takes 2% from each counselor's allocation, yearly allocation, and establishes a fund for those areas of disinvestment. And what it does is it gives it each area a little bit of a boost because there's additional funding that can be considered for some of these areas. And as we all well know, many of our older parts of the city are getting older, and infrastructure's getting more difficult, and things are aging. And so what this does is it establishes a fund that would allow the capital improvements, as they look at their criteria, then they could also look at this fund to help supplement some of those areas. And that's what this particular bill does. I'm happy to answer any questions, Councilor.
Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Borrego, who determines and how is it determined? And if we're going to take a certain amount, the same amount from each district, why do we not just immediately appropriate that to this as opposed to taking it from districts? I have a lot of questions about this because some districts won't get as much as they're used to getting, and some don't get much at all for any kind of rehab. So I'm very curious how this would work and how it's determined and who is going to run it and who determines where it goes.
This particular fund, Councilor, is intended to be part of the capital improvements program. And basically, they already have a set of criteria. I've spoken with Mark Motzko, and they already use a set of criteria, but there's not always enough funding to go around. And so what it does is it's helping other districts, counselors helping each other, basically, and especially in areas where there's a lot of disinvestment, they would use their criteria to establish the needs for the fund.
If I may, Madam President? Madam President, may I follow up? Thank you. And Councilor Borrego, I don't want to be selfish about this, but the district that I represent very seldom gets much, if any, money in this area. We go to the state for extra money for almost everything that we do. We very seldom get it out of a pot like this. And I think that it needs to be a little more thought out, and I would like to see exactly how this is going to be done, simply because if it's this important and we can do it, why don't we just put it in the initial budget and let each district, I understand there are some underserved districts, and quite often they get quite a lot more than the ones who aren't quite as underserved. I think it's a great idea on the surface. I'm not confident that it is something that would work very well in the city, and I'm not comfortable supporting it. So I would hope that we could obviously get some more information before it becomes before the full council and how it's going to be done.
And Councilor Jones, Madam Chair, I think without writing the requirements specifically for the departments, I mean, I think the departments need to come up with some requirements. We can certainly work on that for full council, but I don't know that particular information has to go into the bill itself. But I'm certainly willing to talk with Mr. Motzko and Mr. Montoya and see if we can refine it some more. But I think it's because the money from the pocket of poverty has gone away, and it's been some time now. This is similar to what the funding that the affordable housing fund does. The open space board has an open space fund, so it's similar to that in principle.
Madam President, if I may again, or Madam Chair, sorry.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. I'm just not comfortable with this. I mean, obviously I'm sitting in on this for the first time, but I would certainly hope if and when this comes before council, we have some very good explanation on what's going to happen, where's it coming from, how is it, because a lot of the districts are underserved, a lot of our districts are underserved, and a lot of our districts become more underserved as we funnel to specific districts and don't. There's a reason why we set up mostly with things to be, some of our funding to be equal per district. So I just want to make sure that we have thought this out. Where's it coming from? Is it going to harm other districts with pockets of poverty? We depend on this stuff to do what we do in our districts. So great idea, very noble. Devil's always in the details. Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that.
Counselor Pena, and then and then maybe Director Montoya.
Yes, Madam Chair, before I make my comments, I'd like to hear from Director Montoya.
Okay, thanks, Counselor. Director Montoya, do you have anything to clarify or add or?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, a couple of questions that I might have, and I haven't had a chance to discuss these with Councilor Borrego. And then our capital planner is on the call as well, and he may have some concerns. I think if the bill is rewritten, there has to be clarification where it says resources and tools provided by the Office of Equity and Inclusion. I'm not sure exactly what that means and how we use that as a guide in order to determine, what the needs are and in which district. And then I think I may have just heard this for the first time today. I didn't realize that the 2% would be coming out of the council set aside. We had anticipated that it would just come out of the general 140 million or so, which would be about 2.8 million or so. So I think we need clarification on that as well, because the way the bill is written now, Councillor, I believe that it leaves it up to the discretion of whoever, the administration that's in office or even the councillors. So if we get that clarification, I'd also like to yield to Mr. Madden, if I could, Madam Chair, to see it, or I'll answer any questions you might have, and then I'm not sure if Sean has some concerns as well.
Counselor Pena, do you want to hear from Mr. Madden as well, or do you have questions up to this point?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Madden, if you want to add anything or clarify.
I don't have too much to add other than we are still working with the Office of Equity and Inclusion to kind of determine a few more of those rules, as was passed earlier in the year with R 2085. They've come up with a new map to try and determine poverty and need on a greater scale and taking more things into account. And we're still trying to determine how best to implement that to implement your wishes and make that happen in the capital plan. So I couldn't tell you exactly how this would impact that. I would agree with Director Montoya that our initial impression was that the 2% would come out of the total of the general bond, much like the 2% for open space and 3% for energy. And so that would definitely need to be clarified. And then from there, as Councillor Jones said, the devil would be in the details, and we'd need some time to figure out how best to implement that program.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Councillor Pena?
I guess there's a few questions, but I think I might want to reserve those questions. I think as anything, I'm always an advocate of when there's bills like this, that we really take this to the full council, so I'd actually like to make a motion that we do can't think of,
Without
what's it
recommendation.
called? A no rec.
Without
No rec to
recommendation.
full council, because there are a few questions that I have. I really appreciate Councilor Borrego. Obviously, I support this bill. I was looking at it and I know Councilor Jones made some statements, and I know that it doesn't direct the money. According to what I read, it doesn't direct it to any specific council districts, but you know, with that, there are a lot of things that I'd like to have addressed in the meantime. I actually have a call into Director Montoya to answer some of my questions. So, you know, I'd just like to make a motion for a no rec to full council.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion on the floor, I believe, for move of approval that we need to either vote on and not, see, look, I see Mr. Melendez nodding. I'm getting this. Or Councilor Borrego, I believe you can change your motion.
I will amend my motion, Madam Chair.
How do we do, Mr. Melendez?
I will amend my motion to include immediate not immediate action, I'm sorry. No recommendation.
To full council.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Madam Chair. I think that just gives us a little more time. And as again, I just want to thank Councilor Borrego for putting such important legislation forward. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Councilor Sena.
I was just seconding the new motion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Sena. Any other further comments or questions at this time? Okay, the motion is to move without recommendation to full council. Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Jones,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. We need a little matter of business here to go back to item I. I mistakenly went past this one without a motion for immediate action. This is EC 355, and I would like to move for immediate action. Thank you, Councilor Sena, for a second. If we can please get a vote on this one.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Jones,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. So going back now, we are back on track on item L. This is 067, Councilor Sena or Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 067 is amending section 7-2-1-2 of the Transit System Ordinance to provide for a zero fare pilot project and creating a new section 7-2-1-3. I move a due pass.
Second.
Thank you. We have a second from Councilor Borrego and Pena. Mr. Menicucci or Director Martinez, would either of you like to speak on behalf of this?
Madam Chair, yeah, this item as well as there's two other items related to the free fare pilot program on the agenda tonight. R173, which I believe is agenda item U, and R178, which is Y. And we have had some discussions with the leadership in the transit department about the legality of excluding special events from the zero fares because of FTA rules. So the leadership of transit, I believe, Chris Payton, who is Associate Director, and Danny Holcomb, our Director, I'd like for them to speak to what is allowable or not allowable around excluding special events from fares or actually charging fares when the other services are not charged fares. So if I could have them speak to that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Isaac in the Mayor's conference room. I spoke to Director Holcomb, and he said that we need to do a little bit more research. I did talk to Councilor Sena and let her know, but I think we still need to do a little bit more research on this and see where we're at. So I asked him to have legal take a look at it, so we can get back to you when we have that information.
Thank you. Counselor Sena, do you have something to say? And then we can go on to Mr. Payton or?
Well, I'll wait for Mr. Payton to add some, I guess, input on this before I chime in. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Payton?
Madam Chair, I would defer to what Isaac Padilla did say about we need to consider some other legal matters on this. As a recipient of FTA funding, we're restricted in providing charter service. And so I think our concern is charter service is charging a premium fare for a special event and proposing a zero regular daily fare. That would mean anything above zero would be considered a premium fare. But I think Isaac Padilla has also brought up a good point that we need to consider our other legal representatives regarding this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Payton. Director Holcomb, do you have anything to add?
Madam Chair, councilors, I think Mr. Payton is right on that we just need to make sure that we aren't violating any FTA rules or regs before we talk about charter service, at least. I think that's the big thing, is that we need to make sure that, as Mr. Payton alluded to, is that if we have zero fare, not free fare. I want to keep saying free fare. I'm sorry, zero fare for regular service, that we cannot do a fare of any sort for any special event like Luminaria Tour, Balloon Fiesta, any other events that we may be asked to do this year, or at least during this pilot period.
Thank you, Director. Counselor Sena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think in the meantime, as this goes to council, we can certainly have those discussions and proceed forward with that research and add. I'm open to an amendment to clarify that in terms of special events, but I think it's important to proceed forward, especially at least in the item. I think it's agenda item Y. Yeah, so sorry, I think my internet went out for a little bit. Can I also have Tom chime in on this item as well, since I know that he wrote not just, this one, but a few of the other items that were also mentioned.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, councilors, members of the administration. So basically these two exclusions were basically meant to assist the administration in how they administered the fares. So I think Councilor, that's when we originally wrote it. That's what your desire is, Councilor Sen and Councilor Pena. There is no strong reason to have to keep them in. They were more to the administration's assistance. So the reason we took to zero fare, the fares charged for special events, that was simply because the main goal of it was to make sure that people had a ride to the basic necessities that they needed to for transit. It's kind of assumed that special events such as Luminaria Tours or the Balloon Fiesta, where really transit's offering, like they said, a premium service, where in the Luminaria, you couldn't have the Luminaria Tours without the transit, or you couldn't, and it's not a necessity of life, or Balloon Fiesta, it could be the only way you possibly could get to the Fiesta, but it's more just helping you out rather than having to walk a long way from a parking lot. So it was more seen as just, those weren't the critical, I think, target of what zero fares were about, but they can easily be removed. Why again is just seen as providing the transit. And I think the other thing too I should put about it is that we specifically said are excluded from this section. It doesn't say that they have to be charged. In other words, we were trying to give the director, the transit management department, that discretion so that they could look at each event and say, should we have charge a fare or not? And what is a fair price? Realizing this is kind of outside the regular domain of transit. So, but again, if it can be there, I don't think there's any imperil to the objective of the counselors who are sponsoring it if that is removed. Same thing with number 4. Again, that's just to give transit a tool. And it's like this. Those are monthly transit passes. And the reason we didn't suspend them is that monthly transit passes are awfully like, or transportation development passes. The example I give is Department of Energy here. They give each of their employees, or they had a program where they each were able to receive $45 a month to reimburse them for a transit pass. Now, under this one here, theoretically, they wouldn't need to have to go even have transit passes. However, if they, I know that they asked for, like, for instance, special bus stop at their facility, the large 300,000 square foot office building they built at the south end of Eubank, and the large where they're constrained employees. If they wanted to do additional service to the facility, this would give transit a tool, because if the way they're reimbursed from the Department of Energy is through employee passes, and theoretically transit would have the tool to be able to sell the employees those passes and then use that money to maybe increase the number of buses going by during rush hours at that facility. So it was just kind of more as a tool that may not be in place. Again, having it in or having it out does not in any way imperil or degrade the goals and objectives that the sponsoring counselors were seeking to accomplish.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. Counselor Sena, did you want to follow up after that?
Yeah, I just, as a follow-up to Mr. Minicucci's clarification, I just wanted to add, I think that there is some confusion of general public as well as to why this ordinance is necessary. As we had included in the budget to include zero fares. I also have to be careful in not saying free fares as well, but zero fares in the $3 million that were appropriated. We wanted to also follow up to say that currently the way that this ordinance is written, or previous to that, if you did not pay a fare when you got on the bus, it would be, it could be that you would be charged with a misdemeanor for not paying that fare. So we wanted to add clarifying language into this ordinance that you would not be charged a misdemeanor because you're not paying a fare, because the city has covered that fare. So that's just adding some additional language just to clarify it. And the following resolutions that we'll be discussing later on the agenda also adds more of that clarifying language. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. Any other questions, counselors?
Counselor, I did have my hand up.
Oh, yes, you did, Madam President. And then I'll follow up. I have a couple questions myself.
Well, I was just wondering how this bill, and I think Counselor Sena may have just answered my question, but how this bill and the other bill that's later on relate to each other. So that was kind of the first question I had. And then the second question I had was with regard to whether or not there's been any sort of economic impact analysis done regarding just the whole issue. I mean, I'm very supportive of this, but I'd just like to know if we've done any sort of economic analysis.
Madam Chair, can I answer those questions? Thank you. So I do, I was trying not to speak on the other agenda items until we got there, but they do tie hand in hand, stating that, we have appropriated the $3 million in our budget process. The language on agenda item Y, I believe, just adds clarifying language as to what that $3 million was appropriated for, which was to include zero fares for everyone, not those that are given zero fares at this moment. So it's really expanding this program to allow for everyone to utilize our transit at a zero fare cost. In terms of the other resolution and item that's on the agenda, it also speaks to really our overall goal. We're evaluating this for a year as we have appropriated, and moving forward, what would that look like in the future? Because we've only appropriated it for this fiscal year, I want to mention to our public. So that starts in July. This ordinance that we have before us that we're discussing now, it gives us some leeway time in terms of its implementation, just because we're, also thinking about what other processes are needed to carry out zero fares, whether it's also saying to our drivers and providing that training, as well as thinking about our fare collection boxes. So that's why it has some of the language that it wouldn't commence no later than October. And so that's why they have subsequent resolutions that you'll see following on this agenda. I also wanted to just mention too that not from my understanding that anyone has been charged a misdemeanor for not paying a fare when getting on the bus, but you can be charged a misdemeanor. But from my understanding, no one has.
Madam Chair, may I ask a follow-up question, please? Just because I'd like to be clear before I vote on this. Counselor, is the intent to just do this for a year then and then evaluate it? And then based on the other bill, obviously, if that passes, then the intent would be that it would be zero fares only for 1 year, and then it would be evaluated to see if that was something, or is this the intent to move permanent zero fares? Because, there's a big difference.
Madam Chair and Councilor Borrego, so what this is really intended to do is to really take this evaluation as we appropriated the $3 million and how sustainable it would be for the coming years. I think it's a little too soon to say, but I will note that our own Transit Board Advisory sent in a resolution, and I believe they provided public comment, of course, before the pandemic, in relating to providing zero fares for all. They also have in the, I think one of the resolutions outlines some of the studies that have been conducted already. And I believe, I'm not sure if it's in this packet or not, but the letter that the Transit Board sent can also be sent to you as well.
And I just want to recognize Mr. Holcomb for working on this. I think all of us during this past year have been concerned about, seniors not being able to get to their doctor's appointments and other, obviously now people trying to get back to work and things like that. So I just thank you for that, Mr. Holcomb.
Thank you, Madam President. If there's no other questions at this time, I have a couple, a comment and a question. So I'm reading here, and I was going into this thinking like, okay, we're golden. I'm reading it's October 1st at the latest to start this ordinance. But then I'm hearing that there could be some legal issues with this as it's written right now. Am I correct?
No, I don't think that it's necessarily legal issues the way it's drafted. It's just some implications that we didn't anticipate. So we would like legal to take a look at it and see if what we found today truly does have other types of financial implications. And then we could take that to the full council. But I want us to give accurate information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Padilla. I guess where I'm at is I do not feel comfortable. Again, I started this thinking I'm golden, but to hear that we need legal to look at this and make sure there's no other implications with federal funding, that's massive. And so do we have, we have some time if this is before October on this one. And I will make sure to separate the two and take the next one for item Y later, but I'm very uncomfortable voting anyway on this, actually, when it seems to me like we need to have some further discussions and have legal approve it and make sure that we don't have something that we're missing that could really be an unintended consequence that can backfire seemingly pretty largely when we're having intentions.
Madam Chair, can I, if you don't mind, if I'd like to clarify. What it is, it's not issues with federal money. It's issues on what we can charge here. So I don't think, it's not implicating any federal dollars or anything like that. It's what events we can charge. So can you charge for River of Life? River of Lights, different things like that. So we just want to get more detail. We're not concerned about the legal aspects of the legislation itself. It's just that before we discuss that, I want to be sure that the facts are accurate so that when we pass information to the council, they can act with accurate information. But we're not worried about risking legal funds. It's what can we charge for other events like River Lights, Balloon Fiesta, those types of things.
Fair enough. And I guess to me, the one thing I'm still skeptical, you're starting to convince me a little bit, but the one thing I'm still skeptical on is if the full council deserves to have all of these details, why do we as the committee not deserve to have all of these details? So I'm struggling with wanting to vote to even move this any which way out of committee, personally, if we need all the details. Councilor.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm willing to amend my motion without recommendation so that we can move it to full council so that everyone within the council gets this information, and while in the meantime have legal and our staff work with Mr. Padilla to add some of this clarification. If we could just get it out without recommendation so that all counselors can get that information as well.
Counselor Pena has a second. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Counselor Borrego. Counselor
All right,
Borrego.
counselors, yes, sorry.
Thank you. Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Busan.
Reluctantly, yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move on to R122. This is item M on our agenda. Counselor Borrego.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to defer this for 90 days.
Second.
Counselor Jones with a second. Ms. Hinojos, if you will take a vote.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Busan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item N, which is R131. Counselor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. R131 is a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 376 Dolores Drive Northwest within the city limits of Albuquerque, New Mexico, is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is be required to be removed. I will only move a due pass to get the conversation, but I do move a due pass.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Borrego with the second. Counselor Sena, may I call on Director Williams with an update?
Yes.
Okay, Director Williams.
Madam Chair, councilors, thank you. This particular item, I'm happy to report since the filing of the paperwork associated with the condemnation request, the owner has stepped up and made significant positive changes to the property, not only the building, but the yard itself. If I was able to show you the photographs on my end, it looks completely different than it did when this process began. We're thankful for that, and because of that, we would ask that the committee withdraw this particular request.
Thank you, Director. Just real quick on this one, I really didn't think there was hope for that building when I was looking at this, so that's very exciting. Counselor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am so happy to report that this property is another success story, and that now within District 1 of all of the condemnation resolutions that we have had, we've had quite a few success stories, and this is always what we want to push for. And so I'm very happy to see that and hear the report. It's always an opportunity through this process that the property owners, neighbors, and residents get to work with our planning department to move this to a success story. And this is just one of them. I know that we've been in the news quite a bit in terms of what we're doing for demolitions, but I think that this is really a success story that we can highlight and really be grateful for. So I just want to thank the planning department, Director Williams, and also the property owner for working well with us on this and being so responsive to us and making this really a better place to live. So thank you. At this time, I will withdraw R131.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. I know you just withdrew R131, but Counselor Jones did have her hand up. Would it be all right if we hear from her? Thank you. Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have to say that this is a very gratifying end result on this, and thank you, Counselor Sena, for following it through to the end and getting where it is. This is what we're supposed to do as a city with the rules and regulations and laws that we have in place, so that people understand if they fix up their property after we start citing them, that they will get the property back and it'll be in much better shape and everyone will be happier. So I am, Director Williams, thank you. You've done a perfect, a great job on this. And I would like to see us be more firm on a good number of our properties in this situation so we can get this under control in the city. It's become a very uncomfortable situation for some of us who drive down the streets and see what areas look like. And it can be in any area of the city. This isn't just in one district or one area. This is one of those issues that has grown over the past close to 10 years. And it was completely out of hand. And maybe, Director Brennan Williams, you have it in your hands now and you're taking care of it. So thank you. And thank you, Councilor Sena, for letting this happen.
Thank you, Councilor Jones, and I agree. So with that, I do want to just, Councilor Sena, are you good with that? Do you want to close your close, sort of, or we're withdrawing?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Like I said, it's a great success story on a property, and this is the outcome we always wish to have through this process. So with that, I will withdraw.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. So with that withdrawal, we will move on to agenda item O. R160 is accepting the recommendations of the Balloon Landing Task Force. I move it do pass.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego. I do want to, I will definitely answer questions on this, but I want to clarify something for any media watching or any public watching and everyone else who needs some of the clarification. This is a summary of what the task force has come up with as options for improving and increasing landing sites for balloons in Albuquerque. This is not a promise or a commitment to purchasing any properties at this time or moving things around, or it's not spending any money right now. It is a summary of what the task force came up with. So I know that I've been seeing several things in the news saying that we are considering spending $70 million on purchasing a property for a landing site. As far as I'm concerned, I haven't read anything about that. It's a potential conversation for the future. So I think the task force has come up with some great ideas as far as things that wouldn't cost the city any money, all the way to larger options. So it has everything in between too. So things and ways that residents can participate just because they're interested, ways that we can collaborate with businesses and residents and private properties to improve their properties if they want to, all the way to potentially purchasing larger properties. Mr. Menacucci, if you would like to either correct me if I'm wrong or help elaborate if I'm right. I just want to really dispel that myth because I've seen many news stories saying we're looking at spending this money and that's not on the table at this time.
Madam Chair, councilors, members of the administration, that very well stated it very well. In a quick summary. The only thing I could add, if you just have a quick half minute or so, is just what was our research done? So, what is the validation of the recommendations? Just and Jeff Hertz can follow me if he needs to add in. It was simply this. We started out with there was a large task force from all the property owners, not property owners, but stakeholders and specialists in this matter. It was about 30 people. And what they did is they just, first of all, I started out by saying, how many acres, how many square feet does a balloon need to land? How many balloons do we need to land during the fiesta that go in the waves? So potentially, how many acres do we have now to accommodate for those balloons? How many additional acres of landing do we need? Once that was determined, they just went to the next step and they said, what creates a safe balloon landing from both what expert balloonists require and what the FAA requires. We then defined what that was. They then went out and they identified all the sites that could be safe. With that done, they came up with the conclusion that there weren't probably enough sites, so some sites would have to be adjusted or renovated. They then looked at the various scenarios to, one, acquiring rights to land on those sites, and to go to sites that needed some additional work, how we could go about, or how the Balloon Fiesta could go and the city could go about making the corrections or the improvements to the sites at that point in time. They also looked at whether do they just, like you said, ask people to just put an X out on their site once it's determined as a safe landing place to just land voluntarily. If they do have the landing site that's already safe. If it's not site safe, what would be the methods by which we could partner with the property owner to make improvements? Those improvements were primarily lowering the lights, either moving them to the perimeter of the parking lot or lowering them to like a bollard type lights, taking any landscaping and moving them out to the perimeter of the parking lot. We then went through the detail. We then had the study includes an analysis that was done choosing 3 sample sites as to how that could be done safely by zoning. To meet the zoning code, and also what the estimated cost would be to done on a small, large, and medium site. Then from there, we then went to the final step, which is what you said, was to start to purchase sites about 10, 15 acres or more to land balloons, what potential sites there are, what an estimated cost is. Then finally, what they call the magic bullet site. And that's the one I think the press spoke about. And that is, what if we were to find one big site to land them all? So it's just basically looking at that. We just took a look at that. We took an estimate of where there is a site or where there are or aren't sites, and what it would cost estimate to develop that, to build that site or to buy the site. And then of course, with a large site, you assume you'd want to make it multi-purpose, not just use it 10 days a year. So what it would cost to develop that for most likely sports fields. So that's all the study does. Any next steps would be then for the committee for your reseated committee to kind of focus on, definite programs to implement and how to go about that.
Thank you, Mr. Menicucci. Any questions, counselors? Counselor Borrego?
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment, Counselor, and thank you to yourself and Counselor Harris for moving this along. I was on the task force a couple of years ago, and we were talking about this and working on it. And I certainly, for a district where balloons land in my district during the balloon fiesta on a daily basis, it's important. And I think it's important that we look around the city, for these types of sites. And knowing the balloon fiesta and the economic impact that it does have on the city is truly important to all of us, and our gross receipts taxes especially. So I'm just happy that this is happening. I hope that District 5, you'll be looking, the task force will be looking at some sites here in our district, because they come right over my house every morning during balloon fiesta. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Counselor Borrego. Any other questions or comments, counselors? All right, well, before we go to a vote, I just want to say, who doesn't want options? So that's what this provides. Options for us to go with for the future, to choose about landing sites based off of the recommendations of stakeholders involved. So I do urge your support on this.
Oh, Counselor, can I say one more thing before we vote? I hope the task force, and I said this when I was on the task force, is that we incorporate some folks from Rio Rancho as well, because they're always landing in Rio Rancho. So I hope that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote.
Counselor Borrego?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Pena?
Yes.
Counselor Sena?
Yes.
Counselor Bassan?
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item agenda P is R161, and this is Counselor Borrego.
Thank you, counselors. And I was toggling back and forth to my agenda, so I know what item this is. This is what I'm proposing is a traffic management study be done for Universe between the area of Ventana Hills Road and Irving. And counselors, I'd just like to move this bill, but I'd also like to tell you a little bit about it after I have a second on it.
Thank you. I'll second that for you. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Counselor Bassan. Thank you, counselors. There's been a number of accidents in this area, and unfortunately, we've lost a couple of young lives on several different occasions, and the neighborhood has been very outspoken about this area. And we've actually put in some, and Mr. I see Director Montoya is on the call as well. He might want to talk about some of the improvements that we've already made, but there's a strip in there that people are speeding and they're just not slowing down. So this is really, really important to the community. It's important to me, and unfortunately, I mean, when we talk about the new effort that Councilor Pena and some of the other councilors have put together regarding speeding has a name, it truly does have a name. And unfortunately, we've learned of some of those people that, whose names are associated with this study. So I don't know if we can hear from Director Montoya, but I'd really like to.
Of course, Director.
Madam Chair, members of the committee. So let me first thank Councilor Borrego for taking the initiative to move this forward. She has really been involved and engaged with the community regarding the number of accidents that have occurred on this stretch of universe between two major intersections, so to speak. The department is fully supportive of this legislation. We will work closely with council and council staff in order to get the study underway. As Councilor Borrego mentioned, unfortunately, we have had at least 3 fatalities within the last probably 16 months or so, 18 months. We have made improvements at the intersection of Irving and Universe. We have made improvements along the stretch of Universe as well. We put flashing signals in. We've looked at various options, but I think a very comprehensive study in order to determine is speed a factor? Are the intersections not clearly marked? Is additional lighting needed? Should another traffic signal go in? All of that will tell us a story, and that story is something that I believe we can implement once the study is completed. So again, we're in full support of this legislation.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Montoya, I just wanted to ask, when we conduct these studies, it's coming from the City Council District 5 council set aside. So we still need to vote on it since it's actually her dollars that were approved by voters before for these types of projects. Just a question, or maybe this is for our City Council staff.
Madam Chair, I'll take a stab at that, and then maybe Tom wants to reiterate. So in many of these situations, the department will undertake the study itself at our expense. And then some of these studies are initiated by the counselor, and they've agreed to either split the cost of that study or they'll cover the full cost. So I think it's really how we have the discussion with Tom and his folks and determine what avenue we want to pursue. But we do split costs on a lot of the studies. We fully fund them, as well as the council fully funding them as well.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I can continue with that. Maybe this is for Mr. Melendres. This is actually not necessarily related. I support Councilor Borrego and what she's trying to do here. Just some clarity is that when we use our district set aside dollars for road improvements, and it talks about planning, studying, all this, types of things, is it necessary that it comes to council for the entire council to decide what was kind of already decided by the voters? It's just a kind of sidebar question.
Madam President, Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, the process for getting your set aside in place is obviously to make those allocations and to set the capital budget and appropriations in a certain way, and then for the voters to vote on the bond questions, and your set asides are packaged within those bond questions. So once those steps have occurred, it doesn't need to come back to council because the wheels are already in motion to make those expenditures from the proper places.
So then this didn't necessarily need to come through council? Is that what you're telling me?
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question at this point.
It's just because it's saying that the study, I apologize, Madam Chair, it's because it says that the study, there's not an impact to the general operating fund. The study will be funded through City Council District 5 council set aside funds.
And I think that Councilor Pena, if I may too, part of what I think the question is, we don't necessarily approve all of the traffic studies and all of the different management and safety improvements bills that we put through. So kind of, I guess, maybe why are we doing it for this one?
Can I answer that?
Extra? Yes.
Thank you. I think the important point is that the city is making this a priority. And it's rising to a level that's higher up than things that are already in place. And that's why it's important that it comes to the council. And as Mr. Montoya mentioned, there are portions that may come from my set aside, but there are portions that may actually come from his budget as well. So it's just, and we did this, if you recall, and I'm trying to remember the street that we did it on, where it was in the downtown area. I think there were some issues in the downtown, and so we just kind of followed suit. There was also another one that was done in Councillor Gibson's area, where there were some issues with regard to San Pedro. And so, just to let the council know that these, because of the situation, these are rising to the top of the priority list.
Madam Chair, Madam President, it actually, in the fiscal impact, it doesn't say that the study would be funded from anywhere else other than City Council District 5 Council set aside funds. So
we'll make that adjustment, Councillor, because there may be some funding from my set aside, but it's not entirely intended to be from my set aside.
Madam Chair, Councilors, if I could speak real quickly.
Go ahead.
So Councilor Penny, if this helps clarify it, the resolution is for funding the results of the study. So what's that? Whereas so that's what this is focusing on, is that once the study will be, unless the council would like to change it, but most likely can come well into the budget of a council set aside account. So it'll probably be in the 30 to 50,000 range at most. So that will be picked up in the study, but the resolution focuses on is once the study comes in with recommendations, then it would look at setting those recommendations as a priority, the capital investment for those. So that's why it doesn't impact the operating fund at this time. And it's paid for capital funds from the council set aside, and then the future would be once it's determined what would be the best options to follow, then it would be to fund those options.
And Councillor Pena, we had a meeting with some community members, and there were options everywhere, everything from some new street lights to a roundabout, which we know are pricey. So that is, there are many options that could come out of this study, and some of them being more expensive than others.
Yes, Madam Chair, Madam President, yes, I'm totally supportive of what you're trying to do. I was just trying to get clarification on the process, because it's my understanding when the voters vote on our projects, which are set asides, we actually allocate certain pots of money to certain specific areas. And I didn't realize, I was trying to figure out why it was precedence that we had to bring this particular project to the full council. So it has basically nothing to do with your request. I support what you're trying to do. I'm just trying to get clarification, and for the sake of time, I will talk to Mr. Melendez about this offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. I do agree as well. I support it, but I have one question now that I've got confused on. So again, if we vote to approve this, it does say the funding come in this resolution 161. It says very clearly, the funding comes from District 5 set aside, period.
Mm-hmm.
Once we vote on this, is it not that the funding, you can't just change it after we vote on it. Otherwise, why are we all here?
And I understand that, Councillor. I guess the alternatives may come from our budget, not my set aside, but our budget.
But why does it say set aside, Councillor, if we're not going to, I want you to be prepared to pay for it.
I am prepared, Councillor, to pay for it. I just don't know what the cost is. And that's why Mr. Montoya and I were talking about if there needs to be, if it's a really high amount, then, because some of our studies, I have a traffic study on golf course. It's $100,000. I don't know what the cost of this study is going to be.
Okay.
Until we go out to RFP.
So, Madam Chair, if that's right, if I could speak up to clarify the resolution. So again, the study is independent of the resolution. The resolution is only addresses if the study comes out with recommendations. Let's say the study comes out with a recommendation, put in a traffic signal or put in a roundabout or put in bump outs. The study is only addressing those recommendations, period. The resolution is only addressing the recommendations from the study. The study is separate from the resolution. And if I bring back up the resolution real quick to help. I'm sorry.
And Counselor Bassan, actually, I'm going to be honest with you. We kind of followed your model at Holly. I mean, the bill that you put forward not too long ago.
Which the developer's paying for.
So, Counselor, so what I could say is, and I can just real quickly go. Section 1 of the study says the implementation of the safety recommendations resulting from the traffic safety study on Universe shall be a priority of the City of Albuquerque, but that the city should pursue funding opportunities for the recommended improvements from the 2023 general obligation bond, capital outlay, and the federal TIP process. So basically, it's the implementation of the safety recommendations resulting from the study. So again, the resolution only addresses implementing the study's recommendations. It does not at all address conducting a study. That will be done separately through the council set aside funds.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, only add, hopefully not to confuse things, but to hopefully contribute. This resolution is not appropriating funds, and so that may be the distinction between what you're talking about. The funding for District 5 and those set-asides has been set and appropriated through the processes that Councilor Pena identified. This is setting policy related to that study and not necessarily a need to reappropriate any amount of money for that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Melendrez. Thank you all for going through that and answering and clarifying. If there are no other questions, Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones, Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Pena, Counselor Pena.
I saw her lips move yes, but I know we need to hear her.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Director?
Madam Chair, because of the urgency of this legislation, I'm wondering if Councilor Borrego would ask for immediate action.
I would love to make a recommendation, Madam Chair, for immediate action on this.
I will second that motion. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. We are moving on to item Q. It's R163, and this is Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So R163 is declaring the City Council support of the Route 66 Centennial Celebration in 2026 and directing the Arts and Cultural Services Department to begin the planning process for a Centennial celebration in the city of Albuquerque. So what this merely does is this is kind of mirrors the allocation that we did in the city budget of $3,000. So this is kind of the companion legislation to direct the Arts and Cultural Services Department to begin the planning process and to establish the process.
Thank you. I see Counselor Sena with a second. And any questions? I see Director Gibson there. Do you want to say anything? You want to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. We're the Department of Arts and Culture is very excited to help celebrate the rich cultural history of Route 66. So anything council needs from us, we will be ready for. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have one, and I know I spoke to Counselor Penny about this earlier, but I think just to clarify for the sake, I was a little confused when I was reading through it. So I spoke about it and we had clarification, but we had already appropriated $300,000 in the budget for this purpose. And then reading the legislation, it seemed like, are we doing another 300,000? And so Counselor Pena, if you can just elaborate on that a little bit, I think that would be awesome, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, actually, so on the fiscal impact on our summary here, it says in this resolution, however, it does direct the Arts and Cultural Department to to identify future funding. Oh, that is strange. I just read that for the first time. So actually that's an error. I mean, I guess if once they're doing their planning process and it's going to cost more in subsequent years, or I don't know the reason for it saying this, but the city's operating, then it goes on to say that the city's operating budget for fiscal year 2022 did appropriate $300,000 to begin the planning process of a Route 66 centennial celebration. So I don't know who from our staff actually wrote this up, but I don't know what the intent was to say future allocations.
Councilor Pena, if I can direct you, if you can just look at, so that we can get clarification before we move on any of this too. If you look at section 2 of the bill, it does say that the city of Albuquerque directs the Arts and Cultural Department to begin planning and securing funding for a Route 66 celebratory event. And it seems to me like based off of our discussions, we've secured funding. So I just want to make sure that we're not talking about securing more funding unless perhaps they need more, but it seemed a little mixed up. And I would like to put out clarification.
Madam Chair, Mr. Melendez, is there any way I can add an amendment to that to say that we did secure, and if there is an additional need, it'd come back to council and would vote on it?
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, I can see the confusion, and an amendment may be helpful, but in my read, it's probably not necessary. Maybe it would have been clearer to reference that the 300,000 already existed. However, I think what is being set up here is that the job of the Cultural Services Department is going to be pretty easy, at least at the get-go, because they already have the money appropriated. And so I think it could be read together that the money has been appropriated, and so they won't necessarily need to look for that one, but to the extent that additional funds are necessary, that's what they would be looking for. If you'd like to propose an amendment to that effect, if it would make folks feel more comfortable, I think you can. But I don't think that there's a sort of an inherent inconsistency the way it's written relative to what's been appropriated.
Councilor Pena, would you be open to the idea of just striking and securing funding? So that it would read, Albuquerque City Council directs the Arts and Cultural Department to begin planning for a Route 66 celebratory event in the city of Albuquerque.
I'd be open to that, but maybe, I mean, as we're talking about it, maybe there will be a need to secure additional dollars. So can we put, if there's a need, it'll come back to council anyway, and there'd be a vote. Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, you may just on line 14 of page 2, after section 2, you could move an amendment that said, to the extent that funding beyond the $300,000 that had already been appropriated is needed, the city should pursue funding opportunities through that. I would make I'd make that as a motion if you're okay with it. Madam Chair, I apologize. I was looking at the wrong bill. Let me get you the right. I was looking at Councilor Borrego's bill. It just happened. So be on page 2, line 8. To the extent that funds beyond what have been appropriated are necessary, the Albuquerque City Council directs the Arts and Cultural Department to begin planning and securing funding. And that would require it, Madam Chair, I apologize. That would require it to come back to council, correct? Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, unless there's a source of funding out there that has already been appropriated whose scope could reasonably include this project, yes, it would require it come back to council. Okay. Fair.
Councilor, going back to your previous question on my bill, but if you put money in from your set aside, it wouldn't have to come to council, right?
Yes, that, Madam Chair, yes, that would be what my thought, Madam President, that would be what my thought process would be. That's why I was kind of just questioning the process of the other bill. Not
right. And okay, thank you.
And thank you, Councilor Pena. I think that would make me more comfortable without that added in there. It just seems like we're directing them to look for funding, and it's kind of there. It's really, really there. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that would be my motion, if you'd like to read it into the record one more time, Mr. Melendez. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilor Pena, if I'm going to read it into the record, it would help if I'm unmuted. So now I think I am. On page 2, line 8, after section 2, we would add that to the extent funding beyond the $300,000, which has already been appropriated, is needed, strike that, and the remainder would remain the same. The Albuquerque City Council directs Arts and Culture to plan and secure funding.
Perfect.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego. With a second then, any other questions or comments on this amendment? Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote on the amendment.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. And moving back to the the bill as amended now, is there any further discussion, questions, comments, councilors? Councilor Pena, did you want to add anything or close?
Heard your support. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can please get a vote as amended.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item R. It's one.
Counselor,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair, Madam Chair, does Counselor Pena want to move this for immediate action also? Because I think the planning will be starting very soon on this particular item.
The celebration occurs in 2026. I don't know if we have time or if.
Oh,
you wanna-
I thought it was next year. I'm sorry. Darn,
Are we good?
never mind. I guess we do have time.
Okay, so item R on the agenda is R167. Counselor Sena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. R167 is approving an award from the U.S. Department of Treasury for emergency rental assistance and providing an appropriation to the Department of Family and Community Services beginning in the fiscal year of 2021. I move a do pass.
Second that, Counselor. Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So I just wanted to go a little bit in depth also for our community that is watching. This is the $24 million that's being appropriated, a little bit more than $24 million from the Department of Treasury to really provide that assistance for those that may be facing evictions. And I encourage our community to reach out as this funding is being appropriated to Family and Community Services for those that are really in need. I also wanted to mention that we're still in conversations with the Family and Community Department, but to also look at the security deposit issue that I raised previously during, I believe it was through our budget process for American Rescue Plan. I want to note that this funding is a bit separate from the American Rescue Plan, but I just wanted to put that on our radars as we are discussing that is something that I am looking at as well through this funding. But until I really get some clarifying answers from our Family and Community Department, I won't move that amendment now. But I hope that it's on our radar. So if there's not any other questions on this particular item, I urge your support.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote, please.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Counselor Sena, you have R168, which is agenda item S.
Madam President, this is,
Yes.
yeah, is it okay if we move for immediate action on this as well?
Yes, I move for immediate action.
Second.
Okay, thank you. With the second, Counselor Sena, Counselor Borrego. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Counselor
Counselor-
Sena, item S.
Councilor Bassan, before we move on to the next item, I just had a quick question and maybe we can get some information. Since the administration was on, if we could get a sense of if people are still being evicted and how many and that sort of thing. Is that possible for us to get some sort of a report on that? Maybe just something sent to us by email.
Director Pierce? Wait, you're still muted, Director.
Shame on me. I haven't done Zoom before. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Councilor Bassan and Councilor Borrego. You know, we are getting figures. We pull it off of the dashboard of that 24 million, how much has been dispensed with our partners in the state here in Bernalillo County. And so we could provide that. We also do eviction prevention work, as you know, with other slices of funding through our health and social service centers. So we can definitely provide that to City Council in whatever fashion you would like.
Thank you,
Counselor. Thank you, Director. Just an email would be fine, Director.
Okay, Counselor Sena, if you would like to move on to item S, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Agenda item S is R168, approving and authorizing the filing of grant application and acceptance of potential grant awards from the Federal Health and Human Services Department and providing for an appropriation to the legal department for fiscal years 2022 and 2023. I move a do pass.
Thank you. I will second that. Counselor Pena seconds that. Counselor Sena, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this grant is hoping to provide equitable distribution of health education and vaccines in Albuquerque. I'm a big supporter of health literacy, and this grant really speaks to that. I do have one question of the administration on this bill, that does this need to be moved for immediate action before we finish?
Councilor Sena, this is Michelle from the Office of Equity and Inclusion, and it's our department that submitted the grant. We have not yet heard back from the federal government. We went ahead and submitted the grant because there was a very short deadline, and we anticipate hearing sometime later this month.
So, Madam Chair, if I can follow up. So, Director Melendez, so would this be necessary for immediate action because we will be in recess in July?
That would be helpful. If we get good news, then you will have already appropriated the funds and we can enter into the grant agreement. So thank you.
Duly noted for after we vote.
Mr. Padilla?
Madam President, I would like to check with either Chris or Steve to see if that's allowed. I don't know if we can appropriate money before we receive it, but I'm not sure. I want to be sure that that we don't do anything we're not supposed to.
Mr. Aguilar or Mr. Melendez?
Madam Chair, Councilor Sena and Isaac, I do not know the legal limitation on that. However, it does not seem particularly appropriate to be appropriating money that the city does not have. So I don't know if Steve has a specific answer to that, but as of now, I can tell you that I'm not exactly sure, but it doesn't seem quite correct.
Madam Chair, yeah, I would agree. I think that the city would need to be awarded the funding before it could be appropriated. We don't know if or what that funding is going to be, so I would concur.
So I'm going to follow up on that to clarify then, because the title of this says approving and authorizing the filing of grant application and acceptance of potential grant awards from the Federal Health and Human Services Department and providing for an appropriation to the legal department for fiscal years 2022 and 2023. So is that seemingly not what we're looking for? I mean, I was again on board, like who doesn't want free money? And yes, we want grant money. Let's do this. But if this says it's to provide for an appropriation and we don't even know and we haven't gotten approved. So do we wait?
Madam Chair, I think if the council wanted to go ahead and move for immediate action, I will definitely circle up with our team and with Mr. Melendez before this gets back to the full council on Monday.
And if I may add, I borrowed language from a federal transportation grant that you all did the exact same thing with, that was in anticipation of receiving the grant, and the grant had not yet been awarded. So that's where I got the language to do it in prospective language in the event that we are awarded.
Madam Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Melendez.
That's very helpful. And I liked Mr. Aguilar's suggestion. It sounds like the arrows are pointing to the answer that this probably can be done. But to give you the sort of degree of legal certainty that you would want before you vote, I think we could get that nailed down before next Monday with Ms. Melendez and City Legal.
Thank you. Councilor Sena?
Yeah, I guess I am very on the same mindset. And I think through just the language of it, you know, it is stating, we kind of did this in similar ways for like CARES money and American Rescue Plan funds, just in anticipation of its arrival. I think this is very similar to that. I do want some of that clarifying language though, because originally I was set to move this for immediate action, and now I guess either Chris or Director Melendez can provide more clarity if this is necessary or not. Again, for immediate action, I'm just concerned just because we go into July recess, that if it is awarded, would they have to continue to wait before actually implementing the grant once the funding, if it is approved?
Madam Chair, Councilor Sena, I think what would be helpful is maybe to move it for immediate action. What we can do is then have a look at it, see if any amendments need to be added. So removing the appropriation piece, if that is not allowed, so then we can still process the grant. And if we're allowed to appropriate without having it, then the language will already be there. So I think that gives legally enough time to actually do the research to see if an amendment is necessary, or if we can proceed with the legislation as is.
Thank you. Councilor Sena, anything? Okay. I have to just say that I'm really sorry. I'm just so confused by why we have legislation coming down that later we're going to amend, and it's not going to be what's written here anyway. And it's multiple things on this committee, and it's highly irritating to me, and I have to vent that. So thank you for listening. If there's any other further questions or comments.
Madam Chair, I understand your frustration. I just know that and this is partially my fault, what I did tell a lot of the departments to do is when we're going into recess, I need you to go as quickly as possible. And so because of that, I put a lot of pressure on them. So I just want to let you know that.
All right, I'll know who to point at then. Just teasing, just teasing. Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? So can you remind us what your motion is, Councilor Sena?
The motion present is just a do pass.
Okay.
And then immediate action will follow. Thank you.
Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote.
Councilor Borrego?
Yes.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Councilor Pena?
Yes.
Councilor Sena?
Yes.
Councilor Bassan?
No.
That passes on a 4-1 vote.
Councilor Sena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move for immediate action.
Is there a second? Councilor Pena. Councilor Pena with the second. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on now to agenda item T. This is R172. I will move this for Counselor Davis. It's amending the adopted capital implementation program of the City of Albuquerque by supplementing current appropriations. I will move this without recommendation, being that I think that he should be here to speak on his own behalf for it. Anyway, I move it without recommendation.
Second.
Counselor Jones with a second. Director Gibson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the Department of Arts and Culture, we are approaching a tight deadline on the International District Library. I wish Councilor Davis was here today. We are anticipating an October opening date, and these funds from Bernalillo County will help us to furnish the International District Library, and without these funds, we may not be able to order all the furnishing in time, which could delay the opening. So I just wanted to let the committee know. Thank you.
So Mr. Gibson, you just said the funds from Bernalillo County. Is that correct? Refreshing my memory.
Correct. R21172. These are miscellaneous transfers from funds from Bernalillo County, which has a joint use operating and MOU with the public library system with the city. So these are funds from that the county has already approved that would be transferred to the City of Albuquerque, so we could start procuring the appropriate furnishings for the community rooms and the rest of the IDL build out.
Okay, well, not everybody, maybe some people, but not everybody wants to read on the floor. So I will move a do pass and change my motion.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Jones. Any further comments or questions, counselors? Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Director, I imagine you want immediate action?
I was just going to ask that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, you're welcome. I will make a motion for immediate action.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Borrego. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item U. This is Counselor Sena and Pena, R173.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move R173, amending Resolution 21-148, establishing one-year objectives for the City of Albuquerque in fiscal year 2022 to include a zero fare transit pilot objective to meet 5-year goals. I move a do pass.
I'll second that motion. Mr. Minicucci?
Madam Chair, I don't know if Councilor Sena would like to speak first. If not, I will, if that's all right.
My apologies, Counselor.
I'll defer to Mr. Minicucci first.
Thank you.
So basically, Madam Chair, this bill basically tracks with the other bill 060, I believe it's 067, which was moved forward as a not recommendation. So I don't know if it has to track on that same track. What it does, it just takes 067, which suspends the fares, and states that they would like to, make it an objective to go ahead and implement 067. Also that there be a report, 2 reports issued that they track the data as to how well the suspension of fares is going. If they do have zero fares, that they look at it, what's the impact by volume, ridership by volume, the cost to implement the pilot program, by system-wide and by operating Albuquerque, by operating hour for operating hour, for AVQ ride and Sunvan revenue vehicles, and a review of security calls per route and by type for the Albuquerque Ride system. So what these are is that when we looked at some of the concerns about, or what the questions were about zero fare implementation, we wanted to look at those questions, see if we could track data on those questions. Also, when we looked at nationally when they implement zero fares, what were the subject matters they implement? And that was, how much ridership do you have? How does it impact ridership? How does it impact your costs? Do they go down or do they go up per rider? And also, some of the data found that on routes where there were not security issues did not arise with implementing zero fares. However, on routes where there are existing security issues, they could get aggravated. So one of the things I think would be to how do you track on how that route is going? Do we have the appropriate security? So that was just to track that data. So when the time comes to make the decision on whether or not to continue the program, the council and the administration would have the appropriate data. It asked for the data in 2 reports. The first report would be due just before the next budget session. The second one would be due at the end of the pilot study. The reason for the first report is that in case the study is going very well, and they'll have 7 months of data. They may have enough data if they want to go ahead and implement it full time in the next budget. If they don't, they can then wait, because what will happen is if you wait till the end of the budget cycle, so for instance, if it starts in October of 22 or 21, you will not complete the program until the pilot until October 22, and will not be able to fund a permanent one until July of 23 or June of 23 and start it in July of 23. So in case the council would not like to have that, I think it'd be like a 10-month gap in there. They could have hopefully some data in the time in April of 2022 to make a permanent decision if they choose to, if it's going well, to implement it fully, or if there's a significant number of problems that they would choose to say, let's not do it any further. So I think that is what the purpose of the reports is. Again, like I state, since the other issue, I'm sorry, back up, is section 2. What section 1 does is it simply takes and amends the language as it's stated in the current goals and objectives language to implement a free fare program, and says implement a zero fare program, and the dates to do it by, and also includes the exclusions, the special events and the transportation monthly passes. So again, for that reason, I don't know if the bill has to move forward tracking. It probably has to track with 067 in the legislative process. So if there's any questions.
Sorry, I had to let my dog out. We all get those moments. Any further questions, counselors? And thank you, Mr. Minicucci. Counselor Borrego?
I'm supportive of this, but it seems like the sooner that this can be implemented, the better, because people are going to start going back to work fairly soon. I know it's probably not going to happen in this particular upcoming FY, or at least the first half of it, but it seems to me like the sooner that it could happen. And while I said that, my question of previous is on the previous bill is, has there been an economic impact study done to determine exactly how much revenue we're talking about?
So, Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, so no formal impact study has been done at this time. What has been done is that in the budget questions for 2021, we asked Transit to look at what they thought the costs and the savings would be for the program. And they did provide that. Of course, the cost, you would say, is that you deduct out all fares, because if you had $1.5 million in fares, they had $1 million and change, you would no longer have $1 million and change. Then at the same time, the savings were, they estimated they had about $500,000 in savings of not having to manage the counting machines. They also had some savings in not having to collect those fares and deposit those fares and so forth, convert them, collect the pennies and the quarters and count them. That would allow 2 other people. That's 2 people. Then the other, and that's about 500 and some change, 65 and change. Then they also estimate that right now the county, they give, and the administration, correct me if I understand correctly from their answer, they contract with the county, contracts with them every year to provide service in the county on certain routes, such as the South Valley routes. On those routes, the administration gives them back about $125,000 of their funds in fares collected. if I have that correctly. They would no longer, if the county gives us, for instance, $500,000 a year for their routes, we wouldn't have to give them back 125 anymore. We just collect the 500. So that would be an additional savings. So it came out to about 675. So you deduct that from 1.5, 675, and I think you came out to like about about 800,000, about I think 850, 875 is this kind of generally came from those questions. So that's just the level we've done on the impact. We have not tried to do there's not been a formal study to try to estimate how much would ridership grow. Nor would on that level, or has there been a more farther down line impact study of how does it impact household income if they don't have to pay for a bus? Or how does it, are there certain businesses along routes that receive its additional business? That we have not done, just that.
And just one additional thought, and this is kind of my thought process, and that's why I'm raising it, is, as people start going back to work, understanding how many of those riders are actually using it to go to work and how that promotes our economy. So it'd be interesting if we could find out how many of those riders are actually using the bus to get to their employment. And I know that's hard to, that's probably the piece that's easy to measure. But if we're actually providing more more revenue into our economy from getting people back to work, and that's really what my point is how is this impacting that, I guess.
So, sorry.
So I'm just, that's just kind of my thought process on that one.
So counselors, and then I can refer to the administration on that. But what you're proposing is a common survey that's done in the bus industry. It's called the onboard. It's called the onboard surveys. That usually requires hiring people to be on board and answer the surveys. So I guess for administration, I don't know if that would have to be something we could do through a separate bill to require, because it might require adjustment of their budget and I don't know if it's a big adjustment or not.
And it doesn't have to be a full-blown one. It could just be a sampling from different areas, quadrants of the city, to see if, exactly, if people are using the bus ridership to get to their jobs, and how that kind of equates to, back to, people actually using the bus to stimulate the economy, I guess.
Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess to just touch on Councilor Borrego's questions a little bit. I know not directly, but I know that KRQE did do, of course, this was an unscientific poll, but they did do a release of a poll of, should we include free fares? And I believe that the majority of respondents said yes, 55% did state yes, that we should be providing that. Again, this is not a scientific poll, but they also stated, how likely would you be utilizing the bus? I think 23.2% said very likely, and 15% said likely. I can read off the rest of that information as well if counselors are interested. But overall, in my town hall that I had with some of the board members of our transit board, of other nonprofits that serve, especially our youth, I talked to single moms that were short 4 cents and couldn't ride the bus to take their baby and their groceries back home. I talked to our own youth members who were walking 15 miles back home because they didn't have exact change. So when we talk about how it is an investment into our community, I think that those stories are our examples. And of course, we also heard from others that were trying to utilize the bus to actually apply for jobs. So I do agree that when talking to constituents and communities that are utilizing the bus and that would benefit from our zero fares, it is just apparent. But again, it's not a scientific study. It's not an overall capture of the city, but it is important to have these perspectives and think about how we are providing public transit. I think that I would love to talk more with you, Councilor Borrego, if you would like to further that discussion and that study. But again, one other study that was also done by the Wilderness Society was also how people were utilizing our transit system to get to green space or open space. And I can certainly send you that information in that study as well.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. I very much appreciate that. I think that I'm not opposed to your bill at all. I'm just interested in making sure that we document some of these things. If I don't know if Director Holcomb could just do a simple, as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be a full-blown study, but it could just be a sampling of how many people are actually using the bus to get to work. And that's really what my question is.
Mr. Holcomb, Director.
Thanks, Madam Chair, Madam President, councilors. Transit is actually planning to do an RFP to look at what services we need to change, what services we need to add, what routes we need to add or change. Part of this RFP includes a public participation survey to ask passengers and ask the public what it is they're looking for in a public transportation system. And once we get the results of that RFP, once we get someone in that actually does the RFP and they do that survey, we'll have more data to report back to the council and say, this is what this neighborhood looked for, this is what that neighborhood looked for, this is what everyone wanted. They wanted a service that provided transportation for work or other means. We'll have more data once this RFP is complete. The RFP is out right now. It closes on July 6th. I may be off by a day or so. And then we'll hire someone to come in and do this survey for us. We'll have a whole lot more data to provide to council as soon as we have that information available.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Pena.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask Director Holcomb, all these conversations, I really, Councilor Borrego, they're good questions and, ridership, but really public transportation is not intended to generate money, correct? I mean, it's really just creating a means as to where people have the ability to, get from one place to the other and to really create kind of an, for all intents and purposes, I mean, riding the bus is pretty reasonable, right? So this doesn't really go out of line of what public transportation really calls for, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, there aren't a whole lot of transportation systems in the country, maybe New York City, maybe Los Angeles, that actually generate enough revenue from their fares to cover the operation of their system. So you're right, yes.
And Madam Chair, and Councilor Pena, understand my thinking as I'm very data driven, and data helps us to actually justify what we're doing, and it also helps us to apply in the future for federal funding. So that really is the line of my thinking, and it sounds like Director Holcomb is already moving in the direction to provide us with some of that data that I'm thinking about.
Madam Chair, yes, thank you, Councilor Borrego. I just wanted to kind of have that on the record of just, that sometimes people have this idea that public transportation pays for itself or should pay for itself. And really, as Director Holcomb stated, in many, many, many municipalities, that's not the case. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're getting a little offhand to the topic of the resolution, but as we're discussing this study as well, Director Holcomb, if you and I can just follow up on some of the questions. I know I want to make sure that we're also thinking of those that have mobility issues. As I talked to a constituent whose son was having some difficulties managing our transit system, even though I know that, the Sun Van's dedicated to some of the community that utilize it, but just for us to follow up on some of the survey questions, just to be sure that we're capturing some of the questions that community has as well.
Madam Chair, Councilor Sana, yes, absolutely, we can follow up. Just so you're aware, we're also going to be looking at doing an RFP to study our current Sunvan system. Are there areas of concern? Are there things that we need to change within our Sunvan operating system? What do we need? It's going to be very similar to what we're doing for our fixed route system. So that's to come. Our task has been, our staff has been tasked with trying to get some verbiage on that to start working on that RFP as well.
Thank you, Director.
Councilors, Councilor Pena?
Just to add that, since you're looking at it, and I'm digressing again, but public transportation is important to me. Just looking at north-south routes. I mean, I think that was kind of the key pre-ART, and we missed lots of opportunities in that way. And I know my district in particular, could use a few more routes. But I did want to say about talking about Sunvan is that. Yeah, if you could look at cross municipalities as well. As you know, many doctors move from one hospital to another when you're making your appointments. And unfortunately, since Sunvan doesn't go into Rio Rancho, it leaves a lot of people out in terms of appointments and their availability to be able to see their doctors in Rio Rancho, because it won't take them to the Presbyterian over there or other doctor's offices. So that would be cool. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Councilor Borrego?
I was just going to assure Councilor Pena that we do have a transit center in my district as well, which is adjacent to Rio Rancho. So there's a possibility for park and ride.
Awesome. Thank you, councilors. I'm reminding myself where we're at. So Councilor Sana or Councilor Pena?
I urge your support on R173.
Madam, I apologize for Council.
Sure.
I apologize, Councilor and Madam Chair. I'm just wondering though, since the law, the ordinance that it tracks with, 067, was moved forward without recommendation, that this one has to go to until we clarify the status of the two exclusions. I don't know if I need to refer to Mr. Melendrez on that or not, or I just want to make sure that we.
Mr. Melendrez?
Madam Chair, thanks for that question, Tom. They are related, but not such that they have to carry the same motion. I mean, I think that if you think it's appropriate that they do, it seemed like the issue on the other one was really specific. And from what I heard, it sounded like it was something that could be cleared up with maybe an amendment or just a little bit more discussion. It doesn't necessarily have to have the same motion, though. It's at the discretion of the committee. The motion on the floor is for approval.
Thank you. Councilor Sana, we're good? Okay, Ms. Hinojos?
Councilor Borrego?
Yes.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Councilor Pena?
Yes.
Councilor Sena?
Yes.
Councilor Bassan?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. We are going to move on to agenda item V. This is R174. Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. R174 is adopting the FY 2022, FY 2023 two-year Urban Enhancement Trust Fund program and appropriating funds for the urban enhancement programs projects. I move we do pass, and this is by request.
Thank you, Councilor Sena with a second. Councilors, any questions, comments? Mr. Menicucci, anything? We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Gibson, anything yet? Or do I see you coming around the bend?
Nothing yet, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Padilla?
Madam Chair, I think that Mr. Gibson's going to be asking what I'm going to be requesting.
I gather that this is why you're both popping on the screen. So with that being said, we will go ahead and take a vote on this bill, and then we'll come back to you.
Councilor Borrego?
Yes.
Councilor Jones?
Yes.
Councilor Pena?
Yes.
Councilor Sena?
Yes.
Councilor Bassan?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Which one of you two would like to jump in.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would like to request a motion for immediate action.
I'd like to make a motion for immediate action, Madam Chair.
Sorry, no, I would not, sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. Okay, I'll second that. Thank you. Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Basan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're moving on to item W, R176. This is going to be Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. R176 is amending the adopted capital implementation program in the city of Albuquerque by adopting new projects, supplementing current appropriations, and changing the scope of existing projects. I move we do pass.
Second.
Counselor Borrego with a second. Counselor Pena, do you want to discuss this or do you want to move on? I think there's an amendment.
I don't have that amendment in front of me, so if you do, Madam Chair, if you could present it.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, oh, Counselor Borrego, it's your amendment. That may be why.
Yeah, it is.
Counselor Borrego, do you want to move forward with that amendment?
Yes, I do. So I am, I guess we'd call this committee amendment number 1, Madam Chair. And it says on page 4, after line 26, insert the following. Paseo del Norte, Cayo Norteña to UNSER, adopt citywide policy priority R18-84, transportation infrastructure, GRT bond to $2 million. I'm trying to read it as I'm going back and toggling between. The project termini are extended west to Rainbow Boulevard, and the explanation, adjust the termini for the trans tax funding for the Paseo del Norte build out project to accommodate for a change in project phasing. And I'm toggling back to my screen here.
Thank you. I'll second your motion. Mr. Menicucci or Director, do you want to go ahead and enlighten us a little bit or further?
Madam Chair, I'll yield to Mr. Menicucci. I've not seen the amendment, so I'm not sure what's in it.
Madam Chair, councilors, members of the administration, what it was is that it was a request from DMD's Transportation Development Group. What it was is that originally when we passed the trans tax, we were looking at one method of implementation. And so they were going to focus all the $12 million on that between Cali Norteña and UNSER. They were going to take a look at, I think it was Cali Norteña, UNSER or Universe. I think it was UNSER. They're going to look at just trying to get that phase built once and done on use the $12 million to build the westbound lanes. As they've got, as these are large projects, as you get further into them, you make changes and learn more about what the challenges are and the needs are. And they've determined that instead that they will look at continuing to develop a 4-lane project in multiple phases, but without all the money available for each phase to go from Cali Norteña to Rainbow, rather than just spending the $12 million on that one little phase. So that was just basically, it's kind of a technical phasing adjustment is all, but we have to just adjust our language.
Councilors, any questions? Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote, please, on the amendment.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Basan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. Counselor Pena, we're back onto your bill as amended.
Urge your support. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Basan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item X and almost running out of the alphabet, we are at R177. I will move this for Counselor Gibson.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sorry.
That's okay. Do you want immediate action, Director?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Make a motion for immediate action on R176. Okay,
Second.
Councilor Pena and Senna with a second. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item X. Again, the R177 for Counselor Gibson is approving the attached memorandum of agreement between the City of Albuquerque Parks and Recreation and New Mexico Department of Agriculture in fiscal year 2021. I move it do pass.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Borrego. Director Simon, if you will, please.
Well, thank you, Madam President, Committee Chair, excuse me. This item would basically approve a grant from the Department of Agriculture to fund 2 pollinator planting projects in city parks. This is, part of our efforts to make our city more pollinator friendly. So we've been able to win this grant. The nice thing about the timing, even though we're at the end of the fiscal year, this is a reimbursable grant. So we're moving ahead with the projects. If the council approves the resolution, we'll be good for reimbursement.
Counselors, any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Counselor Borrego.
I would just like to know where Director Simon got that beautiful background.
Occasionally kids draw things and they're better artists than me, so I'll use their material. But yeah, this is obviously to make our city more pollinator friendly means making our city more beautiful, actually, in many, many ways. So these 2 pollinator projects will be not only beautification projects and helpful to pollinators, but they'll be great teaching gardens for kids.
Very
and for
inspiring,
adults as well.
Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I think this one seems a little bit more streamlined. Ms. Hinojos, oh, wait, Mr. Padilla.
Madam Chair, I think that Dave Simon will be asking something that I planned that I was going to ask.
It's like a given at this point. You all better buckle up for Monday's meeting.
Yeah, if you don't have anything else.
City of
on the
Albuquerque is
agenda,
going to have a
Monday-
long meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Ms. Hinojos, if we want to go ahead and take a vote on R178, please.
To clarify, R177,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. See, I was getting ahead of myself.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Director Simon? Did
We
you
would
have
like to request immediate action on the bill. I know you've got a fair number of things to do next week, but this one in particular needs action at the last council meeting for us to be eligible for the reimbursement. So otherwise, I wouldn't ask, but I appreciate your consideration.
We wouldn't want to leave you out, Director. This is important. So thank you. I make a motion for immediate action.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego and Senna. With that, Ms. Hinojos.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you, Director. We're going to move on to item Y. This is R178. It's even in the script what we're going to anticipate at the end. So imagine that. But Counselor Sena or Counselor Pena, if you want.
All right, I'll take it up. R178 is amending the city operating budget language to clarify the intent of the city council to implement a comprehensive zero fare pilot and move it to pass.
Thank you. I'll second that. Counselors, any questions, comments?
My screen froze for a minute there, Counselor. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
The motion was to move a do pass on R178, and I was seconding it. And now we're wondering if anybody has questions or comments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselors, quick question. And I don't know, again, I apologize, Counselor Senna, for stepping on the bill. I don't know if we want to check with Mr. Melendez, if again, this one has to track with 070, with the ordinance or not, being it's the budget language.
Madam Chair, if I may, and Tom, thanks again for the question. I think the issue that we've been seeing actually does, this bill does have in common the question in the ordinance, which is relative to the special affairs, and that language is specifically invoked here. I think that that's an issue that we can have worked out regardless of the motion, but the issue in the prior bill that raised the question appears to exist here as well. And so the motion on the floor is for due pass. I think that's fine. It's not going to change our ability to kind of address that issue with transit before the next meeting. So again, it's at your discretion.
Councilor Senna, are you good with that?
I'm okay with the current motion as is, unless you are not, then I can always amend that motion.
It would be delightful if you'd amend it.
I will amend my motion to be without recommendation.
Thank you, ma'am. I definitely don't feel comfortable. Same thing with the grant for earlier, but thank you for accommodating that. And I will second that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can also provide some clarification on this as well. So we have already passed the 3 million through this budget. This is just adding language to clarify that the $3 million that we appropriated goes to the Zero Fares program for everybody, not just who those we are providing free fares, or sorry, zero fares currently. So that's what this resolution is, and this is why it's different from the other resolution and ordinance. I just wanted to make sure, especially for the public that's watching as well.
Thank you, Counselor. I just want to say real quick too that I'm all for this again, but because we have this couple questions, I think that it's good to have those answered before we firm it up and vote and solidify it. So I am grateful that we can continue this conversation, but still maybe get immediate action on it here in a little bit. Any other questions, counselors?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Hinojos.
Councilor Borrego.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. I'm sorry, Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Senna.
Yes.
Councilor Basan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Councilor Senna.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move immediate action.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego. Okay, Ms. Hinojos.
Councilor Borrego.
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Pena.
Yes.
Councilor Senna.
Yes.
Councilor Basan.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
In all seriousness, those attending and visiting and viewing and being with us this coming Monday for our council meeting before break, bring some popcorn and a meal and a drink and a couch and whatever else.
Counselor, let me just remind everyone that we have a special council meeting on Friday as well.
Thursday, ma'am.
On Thursday, yes. Thursday.
Thank you. We look forward to it. And there being no, Mr. Padilla, are you good?
Madam Chair, yes, I'm good. I'm just admiring the dog.
And I'm admiring the baby.
There you go. There's a lot to admire. Maybe bring those on Monday as well, please. And there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.